updates. Okay, you still have your test tomorrow. Today is our review day for Unit 6. The review is due tomorrow. As a reminder, the review is in Aware. I did give you a hard copy of the review. Okay, it looks like this. Okay, this is what it says on the top. It's the Unit 6 review, but it says you are submitting on Aware for your grade. Do not turn this paper in. It's just for your scratch work, okay, for you to study and practice. Okay, I don't need the paper. You're going to submit your answers in Aware. So you have to log in. You'll see the Unit 6, the CPM Unit 6 review, and that's where you'll go. And the questions are in this order. They're the same questions, but that's where you will type your answers in. You've got to practice typing your answers. So if you have questions about how to input things in Aware, you ask that today so you're ready for the test tomorrow, because the test is also in Aware. There are a few things that I need to update you on. After a meeting that I had discussing calculator use and CPM, because what we've been doing all semester is practicing all of our topics, learning them and practicing them and testing on them using a 4-function calculator. Okay, the little handheld 4-function. And when we tested in Aware, we had the Aware little 4-function activated. The Desmos little 4-function, I should say. But what has come up is now we've finished all of the units material doing it by hand. And the reason is because when you take that TSIA, you do not get a graphing calculator. Okay, you have to be able to answer the questions without a graphing calculator. So, since we have now learned it all without the calculator, what we're going to do is we are going to start learning it with the calculator for the sake of our class test. So you can get out your laptop so that you can practice this with me as I go over it with you, but you need to go to a Desmos graphing calculator, okay? Make sure you don't have the scientific one open, you need the one with the graph. Okay, so the TSIA is scheduled for March 12th, right before we go to spring break is when y'all will be taking it. And on that test, you do not get this Desmos graphing calculator. Okay, but on our unit test, starting now, I'm going to allow you to use Desmos. So you still have to understand and be able to do it by hand for that TSIA test. But if you need to use Desmos or check your answer with Desmos on our unit test, you may do that. So I'm going to split screen here and show you how you would answer these quadratic questions with a calculator. Okay, so for instance, number 1 and 2, 3, so 1, 2, and 3 all talk about factoring. Factor the following, factor out the GCF, factor completely. Okay, now number 4 says to find the solutions. So it is also factoring if you're doing it by hand, but then solving as well. So when you are asked to find solutions or solve, okay, what you need to understand is the vocabulary. Solve means to find solutions, and solutions are just another word for x-intercepts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph this function. And in Desmos, you are going to use X instead of whatever other letters, like here they're using A. We're just going to use X instead of A. But if I type that left, see how the equation is set equal to 0? I don't have to type the equals 0, and I see the graph of this function, this parabola shape. Okay, your x-intercepts, where the graph crosses the x-axis. So here at 0, and this one is at 4. So at 0 and 4, the graph crosses the x-axis. So 0 and 4 are your solutions. Those are your answers here. So you don't have to do all this by hand if you can just look at the graph and see the solutions. Now, the ones that just tell us to factor, that's different because they're not just asking for the x-intercepts. Okay, so let me explain those in a second. Now, the other thing you may notice while we're still on this one, if I type in equals 0, now I don't see that parabola anymore, but I still see the solutions at 0 and 4. It's just drawn as vertical lines through those points. Those are still the solutions. It's just not given as a parabola when you type the equals 0. So you can leave out the equals 0 if you prefer to see the actual shape of the function. Now, if you are asked to factor, like this one, for instance, and I went here and I typed in the equation. And I looked at my x-intercepts here, and they're at -1.5 and 0.6 repeating. You can look at your answer choices and see which ones match, because on the test, you'll have multiple choice questions like this. So you can type your answer choices, answer choice A, type it in, see what it is as a decimal, and see if it matches these. Okay. If you're not sure what these are as fractions, because your answer choice would be written as fractions, just come over and type in -1.5. And then you've got the option here to change it to a fraction. It's -3/2. That's the solution. Okay, the solution is -3/2. Okay, this one, this decimal with 0.6 repeating, so just 0.6. Okay, if you just do a whole bunch of those, okay, you can see that is 2/3. Now, that doesn't tell you the factors. It says factor completely. But your factors come from your solutions. So you could think about this backward. You could say, okay, if I was trying to get this as an equation, not as a 0, okay, this would be 2x plus 3 is what that one would be. This one would be 3x minus 2. See, it's the denominator is the coefficient in front of the x, and the numerator is the constant being added or subtracted. And it's the opposite sign that you see here. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. So if I wrote those as factors, I said that first one shows me it would be 2x plus 3. So I'm going to write 2x plus 3 as a factor. And then this one, 2/3, I'm going to say it's 3x minus 2. And look at where that graph is. Do y'all see that it's right on top of the original blue one? That's what should happen. If you have the correct factors, they should, when you type the factors in like this, they should graph exactly the same as the original. See, it's right on top. So you can work backward from your answer choices when you have multiple choice questions. Okay, but you've got to understand the relationship between the 0 or x-intercept and the factors. Okay, one that's maybe more basic would be like this original one. This graph, this function did not ask for the solutions. It didn't say solve. It just said to factor. But I can see that the solutions are at 4 and 5. So that means it would be x minus 4 and x minus 5. It's the opposite sign that you see in the solution. So x minus 4 and x minus 5. You can see when I typed that in, It went right over the top of that blue graph. You'll see how it's the same graph? That means we have our factors correct. So yes, you can factor and solve all these by hand, like I've been showing you since we started the unit. But now that we've got permission to use Desmos, we can also do the majority of these in Desmos. Now I do want to point out the word problems on here because some of the wording on these is a little funky. So I want you to be sure you are using your logic skills, okay, so to make sure it makes sense. This one says that the area of a rectangle is represented by this equation where W is the width in inches of the rectangle. Find both dimensions. So they give us this expression that is equal to 54. Okay, they tell you this is the area. So the area is 54. Okay, and it's in inches, square inches for the area. So we need to solve this for W to get the width. And then once you know the width and the area, which we do, you would just divide. Whatever the width is, you would divide that out of the area to get the length. Because length times width is area. So area divided by width is length. Now, since we get Desmos, okay, this is going to look a little different. And just so you know, in the aware version of these, I did put some extra steps or hints for those word problems. This is what it looks like in aware. When you go to submit your answers, I give you the hint to rewrite this equation so that it's set equal to 0. So it would look like this. Okay, and then you could factor and solve it. But since we get Desmos, we don't even have to factor and solve it. We can plug this equation using x's, so it'd be x squared plus 15w or x minus 54. You can type the equals 0, or you can just look at the parabola here. So negative 18 and 3 are what you would get for W. Does it make sense in the context of the question? They're talking about the dimensions of a rectangle where W is the width. Does it make sense to have a negative answer? Can your rectangle be negative 18 inches wide? No, the negative does not make sense. What makes sense is the 3. So the rectangle can be 3 inches wide. Okay, so your width here would be 3. Then, as I mentioned, you would take the area, 54, and divide out the width. So 54 divided by 3, and you get 18, which they happen to show us negative 18 over here. So if you need to remember it, you're going to switch that sign of the negative one for your other dimension. So the width is 3, the length is 18. And you can do the same thing on this word problem. I just need to work on. Oh, yes. Set aside for you. Thank you. You're welcome. No problem. So on this other word problem, I also put in a little hint here. If you look in aware, we've got a hint. It says the sum of a number and its square is 32. So first they went ahead and wrote that out as an equation. Some number, x, plus its square, so x squared, is 132. They want us to find the larger of the two numbers. So again, you could simply set this equal to 0 to factor and solve, or you could plug it into Desmos. So you can plug it in exactly as it's written, actually. You don't even have to, since we have Desmos, you don't even have to rearrange it. Uh-oh. Did not mean for that to happen. All right, sorry about that. Did not mean for that interruption. So you can type x plus x squared equals 132. It's not going to graph the parabola, but it graphs the x-intercepts, which are negative 12 and 11. And if you're not sure, is that what it's supposed to be? Plug the numbers in to this equation and see if they work. So does 11 plus 11 squared actually equal 132? Yes, it does. Does negative 12 plus negative 12 squared actually equal 132? Yes, it does. So those solutions are correct. It's negative 12 and 11, but they're only asking you for the larger number. So which one would be larger, negative 12 or 11? Which one is a bigger number? A negative or a positive? A positive. So 11 is bigger than negative 12. So your answer here should just be 11. Okay, so I want y'all to take some time and go through this review and try it. And remember, you've got to be putting your answers in, practice typing them in on Aware, because you're going to have to type them in tomorrow. You'll notice on these that have multiple solutions, I tried to remind you here on all of these to give your solutions in numerical order. That means lowest to highest. So you're going to get two answers here. You put the smaller number first and then the bigger number. If you switch it, it's going to count it wrong because it's only going to read it one direction. So make sure you're putting the smaller number first and then the larger number. Okay. You're not sure which is larger or smaller. Think about them on a number line. The one further to the right is the larger number. The one more to the left is the smaller number. Okay. So y'all I want you practicing in Aware, typing your answers in Aware, but I also want you practicing using Desmos, plugging your equations in to see if that helps you. Remember, the x-intercepts are the solutions. You have to understand the relationship between the x-intercept and the factor to have the graph help you factor. Or you can always just plug all your answer choices in and see which graph matches. But that only works for multiple choice. Okay, the review is not multiple choice. So you do need to be practicing other methods besides just working backward from answer choices. Okay.